Zara Baharuddin always felt the Petronas Towers before she saw them. She would round the corner of Jalan Ampang on her morning walk to work, and the air would grow faintly viscous, like the surface of a drumhead. Invisible notes shimmered through her skin, humming in her molars. Most commuters mistook the sensation for city buzz, but Zara, senior acoustic engineer for the Ministry of Science, and somewhat reluctant guardian of arcane architecture, recognized the microtonal tapestry that held Kuala Lumpur, and in quieter ways the world, in tune. The paired spires were publicly celebrated as icons of steel and glass ambition, but the public plaque neglected one design detail. The superstructure's lattice, calibrated in consultation with half-retired mystics and very practical physicists, punched as a planetary tuning fork. Each sunrise, vibrations climbed the stainless skin, ricocheted through the sky bridge, and radiated outward like ripples smoothing a lake. Every weekday at 9, Zara ascended to a restricted observation deck sandwiched between mechanical floors. There she ran diagnostics on devices tourists would never glimpse. Inertial dampers disguised as ventilation hubs, ceramic chimes disguised as art, and a crystalline core that rang subsonically against Earth's Schumann resonances. Her job was to listen, to adjust phase angles by fractions of cents, and to keep global harmony from drifting into dissonance. She believed in the practicality of her post. If the towers sang true, monsoons followed predictable paths, tectonic plates slept quietly, and the day's petty arguments dissolved before lunch. That Wednesday started level. Her instruments displayed verdant sine waves. Malaysians traded smiles in the courtyard fountains, and Zara's coffee tasted marginally less burnt than usual. By noon she was on break, perched on a stone planter and eating nasi lemak out of waxed paper. A busker she didn't recognize ambled across the plaza, guitar slung low, looking as if he were debating whether to play or to nap. His t-shirt read, "Keep Cal Weird," letters done in a neon swirl. He had the kind of hopeful eyes that suggested recent heartbreak and insufficient rent money. He positioned himself directly beneath the sky bridge, right inside the tower's acoustic node. Zara considered warning him that any performance here would amplify tenfold. The spot was practically a parabolic dish, but she figured a competent musician could turn the effect into pocketfuls of tips. She was still chewing sambal-coated anchovies when he strummed his first chord. The chord was wrong, not simply off-key, but wrong in a more elemental sense, like someone mispronouncing a sacred name and accidentally summoning storms. A cold spark skittered up Zara's spine. The plaza's pigeons jerked their heads in unison. A cluster of tourists froze as camera shutters stalled mid-click. The busker, oblivious, pressed into his song. His voice wavered between ragged bus station ballad and out-of-tune lullaby, sliding around pitches like a drunk exploring wet pavement. Vibrations hurled themselves up the nearest tower, collided with the building's own frequencies, and shattered into beats that rolled across concrete. Zara tasted iron. Her handheld analyzer, still clipped to her belt, lit crimson. She snapped it open. Harmonic drift climbing, phase jitter metastasizing. She sprinted. But sound travels faster than legs. The third verse, if it could be called that, hit a clashing interval precisely inverse to the tower's baseline F-sharp. The plaza yawned, not metaphorically. Air split as a green-edged seam appeared 2 meters above the tiles, humming with cicadas, issuing the wet moss smell of deep jungle. Leaves fluttered in non-existent wind. Beyond the pulsing slit, she glimpsed banyan trunks the width of trucks and vines strung like festival lights. Then the portal widened and dropped onto the paving stones with a hush like silk flung over a stage. Chaos sprayed outward. A German backpacker squealed as a scarlet bird, big enough to carry a toddler, glided out of the opening, tail feathers trailing glyphs of cobalt blue. A grab-and-go salad clerk screamed, flinging lettuce into the air. Tourists bolted, security guards gaped, the busker stopped playing mid-strum, the portal flickered, then steadied, as if waiting. Zara vaulted a bench, nearly twisting her ankle, and skidded to the man's side. "Stop!" she barked, snatching the guitar neck. "I already did," he stuttered, voice hoarse. "Don't play another note," She scowled his face for malicious intent, found only terror and an apologetic mustache. "What's your name?" "Adnan. Look, I'm sorry. I just wrote this song last night. Thought it might..." She pointed at the jungle aperture, now leaking fluorescent butterflies. "You fractured the tower's resonance. You can't busk here without precise pitch. This courtyard is acoustically sensitive." "I can't even read music," he whispered. I noticed. Sirens converged from multiple streets. Zara toggled her ministry badge at approaching police, who hesitated between containing the portal and containing the crowd. She took command with more authority than she felt. "Cordons here and here," she ordered, "and nobody else plays instruments." She yanked a thin tuning fork from her field pouch. One flick, clear A. Let her gauge the distortion still quivering in the air. The frequency was drifting farther every second. Somewhere far from KL, storms would already be behaving strangely. The portal wasn't closing, it was multiplying. Zara heard a pop behind her and saw a second breach bloom against a food court facade, vines spilling through like polite intruders. A third opened above the monorail track, disgorging a troop of luminous monkeys that bounded across the rail with improbable grace. Each portal sang its own note. Discordant cousins of the tower's chant. "We need to retune," she muttered. Adnan hovered near her elbow, pale. "Teach me, and I'll help," he said, voice steady despite the widening disaster. She weighed options. Shutting the entire mechanism required access to the non-public core, plus a code keyed to her biometrics. But the source of the fracture was the song, lodged in the plaza's sonic memory like a bent nail. Perhaps the fastest fix was to overwrite the mistake. Have him play again. Perfectly. "Okay," she said. "You're going to perform your song correctly. Right here, right now. If you hit every interval, the resonance should snap back. The portals will close." He swallowed. "I've never hit a note correctly in my life." "Then we'll learn. Fast." Fire engines whooped near the aquarium. Distant booms hinted at other ruptures across Bukit Bintang. The towers themselves began to shimmer subtly, edges fuzzing like heat mirages. Time compressed. They commandeered the staff lounge inside Surya KLCC, ducking past frightened retail clerks. Zara set up a portable harmonic visualizer, basically a laptop, a ring of sensors and holographic display of frequency roses. She fed Adnan tea she swore would calm his larynx. In 90 frantic minutes, she drilled him on scales, guiding his fingers on the fretboard, insisting he internalize pure intervals. She discovered he possessed uncanny muscle memory. His prior dissonance had sprung not from deafness, but from some subconscious pull toward exotic tunings. When he finally rendered a clean G major, the building seemed to sigh. Outside, however, conditions worsened. Portals sprouted along Jalan Pudu, disgorging creatures from half-remembered folklore. A python with plumage, a deer made of mist, a child-sized man carrying a drum slung of bark. Social media exploded with images. Traffic snarled. The Prime Minister convened emergency cabinet. Zara's phone buzzed with directives. Seal the breaches at any cost. But she ignored them, focusing on teaching Adnan a melody aligned to the tower's architectonic key signature. "The song's structure is fine," she explained, pacing. "Its problem is relational. You were slipping between just intonation and something older." "Older?" "Pre-Cartesian, pre-Pythagorean, jungle tuning. Your subconscious yanked you toward the tonal center of a realm we sort of accidentally bridged." He stared, processing. "The towers are built on harmonic fifths. They soothe. Your song meddled with a tritone. It agitates. Same interval some religions once called the devil in music. So I conjured devils," he said softly. "Odds. Depends who writes the myth." Booms rattled the ceiling. Emergency lighting blinked. A security officer rushed into the lounge. "Mum, the vines reached the mezzanine. People say they hear drums in the elevators." Zara clenched her jaw. "Tell everyone to stay silent. No radios, no announcements, no elevator chimes above mezzo piano." The officer, utterly perplexed, nodded and fled. Adnan exhaled. "Let's do this." They returned to the plaza. Rain clouds brewed green above the spires. Lightning spidered without thunder, as though the sky itself were being retuned. The air vibrated thick with overlapping jungle calls. A rhinoceros hornbill soared past overhead, lost. A perimeter of police and scientific staff opened to let them through. Zara took the central spot, raised a hand for quiet. She tested the atmosphere with her tuning fork deviance, still sharp by 50 cents. Close enough. She unclipped a lapel mic and fitted it to Adnan's collar. She wished for symphonic contingencies, but all she had was a scruffy street musician and faith in mathematics. Adnan began. The first chord rang true, a clear E minor that suspended plaza noise like dust in amber. The second chord nestled into perfect fourths. On her analyzer, harmonic petals converged, overlaying towers fundamental. One of the smaller portals, a child-sized fissure near the fountain, fluttered and sealed with a pop. Encouragement murmured through the crowd. Zara nodded, blinking sweat from her eyes. The third chord approached the critical interval. His fingers trembled. For a heartbeat, his voice slipped flat. The sky flickered scarlet, and the grand portal by the bench widened dangerously. A leafy gust blasted outward, toppling a barricade. Someone screamed. Adnan's eyes widened in panic. Zara struck her tuning fork. Pure, the ring cut the air like cold water. Adnan inhaled, recalibrated his inner ear, and re-sang the chord, aligning vibrato to the fork's shimmering overtone. Thunder rolled, but it felt like applause. The big portal shrunk an inch. He pressed on. Now the melody climbed a stair of perfect thirds. Each correct step unknotted another breach. The one above the monorail fizzed away, scattering monkeys who vanished mid-leap. Somewhere downtown, sirens changed pitch as new harmonics superseded old. Zara's device streamed green. Finally, the coda simple, descending, dangerous. If he landed the closing cadence, structural resonance would snap back. If not, well, she preferred not to imagine. She stood poised to tap override codes into her watch, gambling she could deaden the towers before they cracked open reality completely. Adnan closed his eyes. He leaned into the guitar, aware of nothing but strings and breath. When he released the final note, the courtyard fell utterly silent. For half a second, nothing happened. Then a giant chord, deep as tectonic plates, reverberated from within the towers. Stainless steel ribs thrummed. The sky cleared like ink diluted in water. Portals winked out. Vines receding fast as tape on rewind. Leaves dissolved into luminous confetti. The last thing to vanish was the scarlet bird, folding into a speck of crimson before popping like soap bubble. Cheering erupted. Zara's knees buckled. She steadied herself on a bollard. Instruments globally she knew would report the planet back in tune within minutes. But surfaces needed inspection, and the public would demand explanations. She braced for a week of press conferences. Adnan sagged beside her. "Did we do it?" She nodded. "You did. Nicely played." He laughed shakily. "I've never sung in tune. Not once. How will I go back to being gloriously off-key?" "You won't," she said. "You've heard perfect pitch now. It sticks. Congratulations and condolences." He looked at the towers, then at his battered guitar. "May I keep busking here, if I promise to practice?" Zara smiled, wholly exhausted. First, mandatory lessons. Second, a ministry permit. Third, and here she met his gaze with stern kindness, never play the tritone near these buildings again. The government sealed the incident behind bureaucratic curtains, blaming it on spontaneous atmospheric phenomena. Social media spun elaborate conspiracies. Hashtags trended: KL Junglegate, Butterfly Breakthrough, Forbidden Chord. Memes of Adnan in heroic profile wielding his guitar like a magic sword flooded feeds before quietly tapering off. People were eager to forget anomalies that rattled their worldview. But some anomalies refused obliteration. A month later, Zara sat in her office studying residual spectrograms. she discovered microportals far too faint for human passage. Pinpricks, flickering on rooftops, in drainage grates, in the hollow between subway ties, they emitted whispers of wood smoke and drum beats, as if the jungle world still pressed its ear against Kuala Lumpur, listening. She consulted her mentor, Professor Suryani, retired, but always game for impossible puzzles. Over jugs of teh tarik, they agreed the tower's resonance, though stabilized, bore a permanent scar, a tremolo at 16 hertz, below hearing, like a heartbeat sometimes skipping, not dangerous, but telling. We forced harmony, Suryani mused, but harmony without dissonance is brittle. Maybe the city needs a little jungle in its chord. Zara considered this on late nights, walking the plaza, where everything looked ordinary again, couples posing for selfies, fountains burbling LED colors, skyscraper lights blinking restful Morse. Yet occasionally, when wind curled just right, she sensed vines brushing her ankles or smelled loam beneath imported marble. Adnan kept his lessons. Twice weekly, he and Zara practiced on a rooftop garden the Ministry claimed as experimental acoustics lab. He learned modal scales from Sumatran flutes and Indian ragas. She, in turn, borrowed his instinct for wild modulation. They discovered halfway through their sessions that perfect pitch didn't mean rigidity. One could bend notes deliberately, gracefully, without catastrophe. Dissonance could be courtly if introduced with respect. Together, they wrote a new piece they called Skybridge Canticle. Its opening bars echoed the tower's bassline, then ventured into soft, chromatic climbs reminiscent of hidden rivers. The final chord resolved not into major or minor, but into a suspended second, an invitation, not a conclusion. They tested the composition on the plaza one dawn before crowds arrived. Microfloras responded. Fronds unfurled in planters, sparrows nested near the sound vents, and somewhere distant a faint portal shivered open and closed like a wink. Months passed. Zara presented her findings at conferences under cloaked language, urban anthroacoustic interactions. Colleagues from Tokyo to Toronto pinged her for consultancy on skyscraper symphonics. Discussion of planetary resonance seeped from occult margins into public engineering journal. One humid evening, as monsoon clouds rolled high and gentle, Zara guided Adnan onto the skybridge itself for a private rehearsal. They had obtained special clearance, along with a small string quartet who thought they were beta testing an avant-garde composition. The quartet tuned. Adnan slung a new guitar of dark merbau wood. Zara placed resonance sensors along the beams. The first notes swelled. Tourists on ground level lifted heads, puzzled by music drifting from 170 meters above. The melodies spun webs between the towers, coaxing them to shine with internal light never seen in blueprints. Power meters dipped, then balanced. The sky inhaled. Zara closed her eyes. She felt the city's pulse mellow into polyrhythms. Tires on asphalt, chatter in copyums, elevator bells, thunder of distant surf, and far beyond, the hush of enormous trees breathing. No rupture followed. Instead, harmony enfolded dissonance the way a river holds rocks, shaping them slowly, singing around them. When the piece ended, silence settled thick and sweet. Adnan lowered his guitar. The quartet looked astonished, not sure why tears glazed their cheeks. Zara opened her analyzer. The graph pulsed in symmetrical waves, but a mischievous ripple danced across the center line, signifying both stability and uncharted possibility. The towers, great tuning forks of civilization, had learned a new overtone. So had she. Below them, Kuala Lumpur glittered, a city of glass and story. Somewhere between traffic light and blooming frangipani, perhaps a tiny portal fluttered, invisible to eyes but audible to hearts attuned for it. Not a wound anymore, not a threat, just a door, undecided whether to stay open or closed. Zara rested her palm atop the skybridge rail. Steel vibrated warm beneath her skin. The world, she murmured, isn't meant to be in perfect tune. It's meant to keep searching for it. Adnan, hearing, nodded. He lifted his guitar again, struck a soft chord, neither major nor minor, and let it hang unanswered in monsoon-scented dusk.